David felt as though he'd been put through a ringer as he followed Officer Magnan into the leader's suite at State House. Several nights of sleepiness, the worries of planning for a refuge, and the scene with Lee had left him limp and spiritless. The girl was a danger, he knew, but she was only one of many. He nodded at Dr. Lanza, who was busy reading the reports from Bureau Med, and saluted Leader Marley, who was talking with a watchguard. Marley looked up briefly. "Sit down, Wong." David folded himself into a chair, grateful for a few moments in which to collect himself, while Marley gave the last of his orders. "Put them in the Vermont granite quarries and keep them at work for the next year. As you say, Leader. With the usual secrecy, of course." "No, you blockhead. These are a bunch of nobodies. Use all the publicity you can get. Keep a punishment a secret, and how can it have any effect on other people? No, I want full radio and news coverage, and telecast showings, as they swing the first pick at the first rocks. People have got to realize that the leader knows best, that treason doesn't pay. No matter how clever they think they are, they'll always get caught. Understand? As you say, Leader." "Then get going." As the guard left the room, the Leader Marley turned to David. "What fools people are." He ran his beefy hands through a shock of black hair, blinked his eyes, and wrinkled the heavy black brows that met over his nose. Wonderingly, he shook his massive head as he drew his gleaming needler from his breast pocket and played with it, tossing it from hand to hand while he talked. "I am probably the most generous leader the state has had since the atomic wars, Wong, and I never withhold a privilege from someone who has deserved it. But people mistake me when they think that I am weak and will overlook treason." "Your generosity is byword, Leader Marley," said Wong. "But some people are incapable of acting for the best interests, even when you have defined it for them. Who are these latest traitors?" "Oh, nobody of real importance, of course, except as they waste time, which they owe the state. Just attempts at illegal study. An office category who has found a basement room in a deserted building and was spending all his evening hours there practicing the violin. A theater man who was illegally trying to learn carpentry. And a teacher of mathematics who had forged a key to the linguistics library and had been getting in every night to study a dead language. Cuneiform, Latin, something like that. Utterly without practical value. This last one is an old man, and two ought to have known better. People must be made to realize that if they want the privilege and use of study, they will have to earn it, and I am very broad-minded in such cases. Nobody has better reason to know that than I, Leader Marley, and I am always grateful to you." Marley coughed and straightened the jacket over his bear-like chest as he put back his needler. "Now to business. Where's that memorandum, Lanza?" Dr. Lanza handed him the paper, then sat down beside the leader. "First, when Dr. Lanza called you on the last week, he found the door to your office locked. What explanation do you have?" David smiled and spread his hands. "My explanation is that the generosity of the Leader Marley. You have so many affairs to occupy your attention that it is not surprising that you do not remember rewarding me with the free choice some year ago. For my work on Blue Martian, I chose, as I'm sure you remember now, an occasional hour of privacy. The leader blinked. That's right. I had forgotten. Well, the leader never goes back on his word. The why in the name of Marley you fellows want a crazy thing like that is beyond me. What do you do behind a locked door that you don't want anyone to see? Do you doubt my loyalty, Leader Marley? I doubt everything. What do you want with privacy? Lanza broke in amiably. I'm afraid we just have to accept such wishes as the one of harmless abnormalities of the research mind, Leader. Since I grew up in that category, I understand it to some extent. You're right in calling it abnormal. I think perhaps I'd better remove that from the possible choices in the future. It could easily be misused, and it never did make any sense to me. Well, second, it's been more than 3 years since you reported any progress with the problem of white Martian fever, Wong. What's your explanation? Research is not always swift, Leader. But I distinctly ordered you to find an immunization agent within 3 years. Our colonies on Mars cannot wait forever. I've been patient with you, but you've had more than enough time. I'm very sorry, Leader Marley. I've done my best, and so have my colleagues, but the problem is complex. If I may explain, we had to find a suitable culture medium for growing the virus. And then we had to work at the problem of coupling it with a suitable haptens. Impatiently, Marley waved his hand. You know that I don't understand your jargon. That's not my business. What troubles you've had, I want results. You got results on Blue Martian quickly enough. We were fortunate, but when we stormed the Citadel of Knowledge, Leader Marley, no one can predict how long it will take for the Citadel to fall. Nonsense. I'm warning you. Wong, you're failing in your duty to the state, and you can't escape the consequences with poetic double talk. I allow special privileges to you people in research, and I expect a proper appreciation in return. When I order you to produce protection for White Martian, I want results. But you can't get a thing like that just by asking for it. Such things are not simply under your control. Watch yourself, Wong. Your remarks are dangerously close to treason. Is it treason to tell you a plain fact? Stony-faced, David stared defiantly at Marley, trying to control the trembling of his body. If he had a needler at that instant, he realized incredulously, he would have shot the leader and thought of his own life, a small price to pay for such a pleasure. Lanza coughed. I'm afraid Dr. Wong is not well, Leader. Worrying over the slowness of his work has distorted his reactions. But I am sure that you will understand, as you always do, and be indulgent. I'll overlook your remarks, Dr. Wong, said Marley, relaxing. But you'd better change your attitude. You research people cause me more trouble than any of the other 3 categories put together. Sometimes I wonder if a spell in the granite quarries might. A light flashed on his desk. He watched the blinking code for a second, then rose abruptly and left the room. The 2 men sat in silence. David glanced at Lanza, and Lanza shifted in his chair. Thanks for the good word, said David warily. How'd you like to be a ruler, by the way? When we were in med school together, I thought you were a man with ideas. When I was in med school, I didn't know what was good for me, Lanza replied stiffly. And do you think you do now? A slow flush crept over Lanza's face. Look here, Wong. Each man has to make his own terms with himself. Don't act so smug. You shut yourself away inside the nice white walls of your laboratory, and ignore all the conflicts of life. You shut your ears and your eyes, live in perfect harmony with your test tubes, and let the world go hang. Well, that isn't my way. Your way, apparently, is to worm yourself into the confidence of that steel-hearted imbecile who rules our lives and our thoughts, and spend 24 hours a day saying yes, yes, and waiting for him to die so you can step into his shoes. We're alone, said Lanza. I won't report you, but I have no intention of justifying myself. Have you any idea why you've been let alone for so long? You haven't produced anything tangible in several years. Haven't you wondered why no one put on the pressure? Haven't. He broke off as Leader Marley lumbered back into the room and fell into a chair. The leader's manner had altered. He stared at David with grim inquiry, the beady eyes traveling slowly over him, taking in his rumpled hair, his strained face, and the rigid set of his shoulders. At last Marley spoke, his voice soft with menace. You're looking well, Dr. Wong. Remarkably well. In fact, it occurs to me that you don't seem to have aged a bit since my last visit to your laboratory. Tell me, how do you keep your youth?